All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak, and we're talking about the vetting here. Let me bring in Abdullah. Abdullah, you said that this was just ticking the boxes. When we look at the front page of the dailies, we see how Ruto ministers minted millions in 21 months, how there's an issue here of no sparks as 2.5 billion nominees face the test. What would you have wanted to hear now that you say this was the questioning was just ticking boxes?
This, especially on this question of net worth, for it not to appear to be a sentimental question of just what is your net worth. It's a nice catchphrase for us to know about how much wealth those whom we put into the highest offices of this country possess. A better question would be, how have you acquired it? It's of public interest for us to know how those who wield the highest positions, especially those who've previously served in public offices, have acquired those wealth. If it is business, has it been in any dealings with the very government that they work in? It should go deeper than what is your net worth. If anything, a lot of people yesterday were commenting that even for those who are worth 50 million, could claim to be 10 times that amount to give themselves a headroom for when and if they acquire that wealth within the period that they are going to serve in government. Secondly, on the question, specifics, what my dear sister here said that Mr. Kithure Kindiki responded well to some of the questions. If anything, Mr. Kithure Kindiki, who is a professor of law, proposed a very unconstitutional measure that he is going to work on if he gets back to that office. He said that he is going to ask protest organizers to give the exact numbers of protesters that they are going who are going to turn out to those protesters. That is not a requirement within the Constitution. Any policy proposal that is as unconstitutional as that one should be a red flag, really. He equally proposed that he is going to demarcate specific places where people are going to protest. That is not what the Constitution of Kenya envisioned. It envisioned a protection of those articles, especially on Article 37. Protest wherever you want, as long as you give notification to the police. So if professor of law, someone who served as the Interior Minister, and under his time we've seen police brutality, the death of young people, 50 of them and counting, 100 of them still missing up to date, glare abductions in the light of day. If for God's sake, if we could approve that minister to get back in the very same docket, I think we are failing as a country. Okay,
Patience, are we simply sensationalizing this issue around net worth? Because they did try to explain it. They said that some of them is because of some pending bills that they didn't have and they've been paid. Also, some of them are from small profits. Their words, not mine.
Well, on to that particular question, what I would like to say is some of the nominees were able to explain their increment in wealth. And for example, Professor Kithure Kindiki, he was able to mention that his source of wealth is the two homes. Yes, two homes, one in Tharaka Nithi and one in Nairobi, and also law firm, land and buildings. And all these things, we understand, they always appreciate in value. There is increment in value of these particular properties and buildings that they own. So personally, I feel they were in the best position to justify their wealth and their net worth. However, if Kenyans, because it was a transparent process, and Kenyans kept on asking questions through the chats, and still, as my colleague here said, if there's need for them to be able to conduct live audit, then it's a free country. It's a country of democracy. It can be done. So there's nothing that is tying us to say that there's much that has been left out. There's still more time to do live audits on them if you feel whatever justification they have given is not enough. On to a certain something that he has said about brutality of the police. And I think as where I stand, in my own opinion, I'll say I cannot personally substantiate the facts, or I cannot produce evidence to say about the police brutality. But I know there's an independent organ that is working close to the government, which is IPOA, to be able to produce the report.
Which says they've been frustrated by the same police that they're investigating. They've made that very clear.
They've made that very clear. I'm not aware about that. Perhaps it's in the public domain, but I'm not aware about it. But however, I know that that's an independent body and supposed to produce a report. And if there's any armed officer that hurt an unarmed civilian, then they need to produce a report for prosecution. Okay. That's what I can say.
All right.
Yes.
Just when we talk about an increase, say for example of 150 million in 21 months, that's 7.2 million every month for all the 21 months, 266,000 every day. Does it make sense to you?
Absolutely. And let me tell you why. When you talk about net worth, the first word is net, meaning in finance words, assets less liabilities. So when you say you have increased in your net worth in a span of 21 months, within a certain range, well, it is it's a huge increase. But if you put me in Professor Kithure Kindiki's position as at 2021 at a net worth of 500 million, I think I would have doubled that, let alone his increase in about 20%.
In 21 months?
Yes,
How?
absolutely. Give me 1 year, actually, just 12. I would have doubled that, because how will you increase? You know, Kenyans are thinking that the net worth is just personal assets, your vehicles, you need. If you have investments such as real estate, and I feel like the economy has been, people are feeling the effect of the cost of living, mostly because even in real estate, our rent is increasing, our lands are always appreciating, therefore it is probably a loss to a tenant, but a gain to a landowner. And on top of that, liabilities, mortgages, debt and whatnot. If in 12 months you have not reduced your liabilities, as much as in your investment increased in your real estate, even in your personal assets, I feel like that would have even been a bigger question, on top of the fact that he gained one of the most powerful seats in the country. We do not also deny the fact that the interior CS is a very powerful position. If in those 21 months you would have not gained such, for me, I would have actually been doubled if you had put me in such a position.
But that's where the problem is, because people say there's conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, okay. As my colleague
Though he
Zulai
mentioned
has
that
said,
he's not been doing business with government at all.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that. And at this point, that's a he said, she said situation. And as my colleague had said, is to be transparent with how you got to that position and what have you. Of course, there's a thin line between what a person can produce to the public and what they can say is now a right to privacy and whatnot, and what they cannot disclose further than that. As far as we are concerned, we have not been made aware in the public of any, conspiracies within his docket and in his ministry. So if you tell me from his businesses, from his houses and what have you, and of course reducing his liabilities also has a net effect on his net worth, I feel like that's proper doable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Kidi, does Josephine make sense when she says that it's really money begets money, and economies of scale also works here? I mean, in economics, if you have a lot of money, definitely you can create more wealth in 21 months. Is that a fair assessment? Are you buying that argument?
Well, I will give it to my sister for her optimism, but then we must remember that where are we coming from as a country? Sorry, sometime in the early 70s, we had what was called the Ndegwa Commission, that then allowed people holding positions of responsibility to trade with government. And during the last administration, we saw what happens when there is commercial interest between those holding positions of responsibility, and when there is, interest between of those holding positions of responsibility and the private commercial interests. I think that if in 21 months we can have an individual holding such positions can have up to 150 million, I would call it gross, then I think it begs the question that the vetting committee at the very least should be able to demand that let them see the records of how this growth has happened. Because it is not enough to just say that I have had pending bills paid when that is not supported. It is not enough to say that my properties have appreciated when that is not supported with evidence. And I think that it is also fair that the vetting committee does not just rely on, say, reports from the DCI and the EACC. I think that the vetting committee sitting with the powers of the High Court should be able to go on a fact-finding mission in its own motion based on the records presented before them by the nominees, so that they are able to verify. Remember that this is a team sitting on behalf of the people of Kenya to vet the suitability of the people who might help us regain the frayed soul of the nation. When young people went to the streets and stormed parliament and said that, that we reject, they were rejecting the idea that those people in power are superior to everybody else, that they can take advantage of these positions of responsibility and enrich themselves unjustifiably in comparison to what is available to other citizens.
Okay.
Yes.
But Bolo, you know, there's something that Josephine is raising here, which I also find interesting. So look, for example, the GDP growth in the real estate sector in 2023 was at 6.2%. If you have a house at 190 million, it means within that year it grew by around 11.7 million. Are we simply over-sensationalizing this net worth conversation?
We are not. In fact, I wanted to, as she was saying that, I was just telling myself, and I was taking notes and saying, I need to see her after this conversation so she can tell me what magic she would use. Because in a country where there's high cost of production, in a country where Kenyans are not spending, in a country where Kenyans are finding importing goods for personal use to be cheaper. Right now, even sanitary towels, very few Kenyans are buying, locally produced sanitary towels. So in a country where the economy is not doing so well, in a country where, and rightfully, as you've said, even looking at, but you said 2023, that would be 11.7 million. So
but that's one property.
Exactly.
Several of them then.
So I would want to know how are they acquired, because a number of them also spoke about, acquiring, and I think it was one of the CSs, I can't remember, who spoke about acquiring a new asset during that period. So I would want to know. I'd also, ask myself, you're talking about having been paid pending bills when you came into government, when we are having Kenyans who are committing suicide because of pending bills.
Yes.
So does it mean that I then have to be in government for my pending bills to be paid? Does it mean that I have to know someone, as they say, for me to be able to get the money that I have worked for? So that begs the question. And when we talk about, IPOA saying that they are being frustrated, again, I am asking myself, we have seen a lot of times, and it's not just with IPOA, we're also seeing EACC versus ODPPP. We are seeing Dr. Baraza saying that she wants to bring external auditors, which means she does not trust the office of the Attorney General, even as of the Auditor General, even as she's getting into office. So there's that trust deficit, even within government. And we are always seeing that whenever a member of parliament or whenever someone prominent is having a case with EACC, the minute they are in bed with the ruling government, then that case just disappears like magic. We are yet to see someone actually being put to account. And so these are some of the things that are now making that trust deficit, not only within government, but also even with Kenyans. And like Billion said, this is a time where Kenyans are really looking at and following the vetting process. They are listening to those arguments, and they will also continue to oversight those same CSAs. I would urge the National Assembly to be very keen on how they're doing it. It would be, I would not say amazing, but it would be interesting to see that for the first time there is a CS nominee that has not been approved, and they have, the basis of the answers they are given, that they are not able to prove one or two things, that they have had the cry of the public, because we also saw in one of the reports that a number of people are, not very excited about Murkomen coming back. So I would want to see the National Assembly being, very keen and saying, we had you people the first time. We don't want you to come back and say hi to us in parliament. So we are listening to you, we are following your lead, and we are doing things according to how they should be done.
Okay, and Billion, you had mentioned something that the parliament had a chance to redeem itself, but you're not very happy with what they did. How would they have redeemed itself on this issue of net worth?
I think if you look at this issue of net worth, it looks like it's being romanticized. They're just massaging how much are you worth, what's your net worth, okay, how have you, it's a you know, from the first nominee to the third nominee, you know how to answer that question. I think the parliament needs to show us the different angles that they ask different nominees, how they acquired these properties, how they are able to be worth what they are worth. We don't care about how they made, we don't care about their net worth. We only care about how did they make the money, because there's a public scrutiny that is going on right now. There are people sitting down, just listening and watching and following, and it's because it's been assumed that those who are in public offices make a lot of wealth when you're in public office. So this is an opportunity for Parliament to be able to, you know, even clean, make clean those who have been nominated in those spaces, to show how they've been able to make their money. Because if the young people go to the streets tomorrow, they'll still sing the same song, Wizi, Mwizi, because we don't know how they've been able to make to make their money, to get to where they are. So this is an opportunity for Parliament, not to just ask questions for the sake. It is a time for Parliament to redeem themselves by asking questions that Kenyans have been sending to them, asking questions that the public have been asking, asking questions that, you know, all of us want to hear. Not how much are you worth? Okay, fine. How much were you worth before you got to the office last time? Okay, next page. So that is why we are saying the committee, the Parliament. I've seen a few people asking very tough questions, but we expect this to be a grilling process, that we should be confident and trust them when they're in the office.
Yeah, but Abdullah, isn't this just a matter of formality, really? Because the truth is that they have no way of verifying whether this is true or not. In fact, one of the nominees mentioned that, oh my God, sorry, I forgot. I had 2 other vehicles that are worth about 17 million. I didn't include that. So just by virtue of telling me, just add it to my wealth. I mean, no way of verifying this. It's just formality, right?
I think if they had the intention, Trevor, Parliament would have every way to really verify. If they had the intention, they would collect this beforehand, or they would collect immediately after this vetting process and then pass it through their auditors or legal people to really verify and give us a final report if they had the intention. Do they have the intention? That is what we doubt. We do not think that they go beyond what we all saw on camera. Those 2 hours per nominee, I think, is the much that we will get from this Parliament. My sister said that it would be interesting to see Parliament reject some of these nominees, especially those that Kenyans have really spoken up about. My sister, I have news for you. Penina Malonza was rejected by the committee. She was approved by the House the last time because, well, the appointing authority wanted that name approved. We will not have any different situation, especially with the crop of politicians that we have in Parliament today. Rejected or not, chances are very high they will be approved. But Kenyans, especially the young Kenyans, have now proven that they wield power and that they will respond in any way possible that they know, against people whom they do not see fit to hold those offices. There are a lot of names, especially those who've served for the past 21 months, who do not deserve to be in those offices. My sister here talked about, Trevor, I don't think I doubt the possibility that your net worth could grow. All those justifications could make sense. Please convince us. It's the responsibility of those who are going to occupy high offices within this country to convince us that my net worth has grown by this much, and here is the detailed explanation of how that has happened. If they can do that to their wealth, I think they are more valuable to this economy in the private sector as they are in government sector. If you can grow your net worth, or your wealth for that matter, by 20-30% in a matter of 21 months, please come to the private sector, create jobs, do more valuable things for this economy. I do not think, if it is very appealing to be in public office, that is why they are fighting to be in public office. If it was very easy to create wealth externally in the private sector, Trevor, they would be there.
Okay. And just when Bolo wanted you to tell us your magic of doubling, said if you had 500 million, you'd double it. How?
Let me tell you, Trevor, I do not know personally, first of all, what accumulates to his 500 million as at 2021, but I would imagine it's mostly real estate, personal assets, and will make up like 90% of the book. In fact, if you just take that probably, and of course maybe cash at hand, if you just take that cash at hand, probably put it in money market, put it in infrastructure boards and what have you, your real estate, if you have property here, take this rent from this side, now build the other side of your land, and now, you know, rent it out to other tenants or put it out, mortgage it out or what have you. That is just more than enough. You could just be sitting at home and your money is coming in passively, and in 21 months, you can have doubled what you had in the previous time, including your interest maybe from your infrastructure bonds and what have you, your investments you've made in your money market fund, using that interest to pay off your debts, your liabilities, and what have you. That is just more than enough, just sitting and planning it on paper. You don't even really need. If you put me that 500 million right now, don't even give me that CS position. Now we're talking about the salary he's gotten from being in that position, which is actually a significant amount. That alone is enough to increase your net worth by 20%, yeah, as he's done. It's justifiable. Okay. And I'd also like to say that it's not a CS versus Mwananchi, what Bolo also said. It's not a CS versus Mwananchi talk. Like she mentioned something very sensitive and said, because he's paid off some of his liabilities, does that mean a Mwananchi cannot pay off his liabilities? That is a whole different conversation. Him in his position, great, he was able to pay off his liabilities and what have you. But now, as a government person, him knowing that the importance of being able to pay off your debts and what have you, what will he do to enable now the common Mwananchi to, although that's not his docket in Ministry of Interior, but what can they do in the government to enable now Mwananchi to be able to pay off? Is it to reduce interest rates of banks and what have you? Those are the questions that we should be having. We're not supposed to be pitting the government against the Mwananchi, you know? Yeah.
And Patience, is this even a necessary question? Let's start from there. Because first, there's no way of verifying whatever they say. Second, it's coming at a time when the public itself is already angry. It irks people even more when everybody speaks of how much they are worth at a time when people have lost their jobs, people have closed down businesses, people are struggling. Is it a necessary question?
Trevor, you know, all of us should agree that life is progressive and not static. And that means we need to grow in all ways as human beings, including even our wealth. So the very fact that these particular CS nominees were able to justify, because apart from all that we have mentioned that can increase our wealth, also there's ancestral land that belongs to this particular CS nominees and the rest. So for me, what I will say, the vetting process is done under the confines of the law, and they have observed it. And if there's anything Kenyans we wish to know, for example, we can request for the government to conduct lifestyle audits for these particular people, for us to be able to get a breakdown of their source of wealth. Yes. Yeah? Yes.
So you think it is a necessary question?
It is a necessary question as long as it is confined within the law. Okay. It is confined within the law, because as we talk here, we are just talking out of hearsays, you know. But if it is within the confines of law and the government conducts a life audit, a lifestyle audit to this particular CSS, then we'll be able to get the justification from all this, because I believe they have the justification to the source of their wealth.
Okay. Kidi, is this necessary? Because you see, the thing is, I'm asking you this because it stokes public anger, but there are no real answers. Even if somebody tells you they're worth 100 million, you have no way of verifying. Yes. You're not going to charge them with corruption just because they've said they have money. Yes. Why is that question even necessary?
The question of personal net worth is at the very center of public appointments. Because, Trevor, we must remember that Chapter 6 of the Constitution is essentially the central nervous system of this Constitution. You kill Chapter 6, you kill everything. Part of why we brought Chapter 6 of the Constitution is because we want people that then we appoint, that hold positions of trust, to be able to only be in those positions in the interest and the benefit of the people of Kenya. But then many a times when we talk about, remember when this administration was coming to office, they screamed a lot at us about state capture. But then you see what has happened in the last 21 months. They have not spoken 1 minute about state capture. State capture happens when personal interests are conflated with public interest, and particularly when those personal interests take center stage. So I still think that this question is very central. We must be able to know that when people get into offices, why is it that within such a short period of time, when, as my sister Ruth has said, when everyone else is struggling to pay basic amenities, and when I say everyone, I am speaking about people with salaries, people in the state sector jobs, people holding decent jobs in the private sector, are the ones that are struggling. But then for some strange reason, and that God is so gracious on people who are sitting in cabinet and they are earning massive amounts of money and their properties are appreciating within such a short period of time, it is something we must still focus our eyes on. And I think that as young people from the inter-parties, that is young people from across the political divide, we are going to make a visit to Parliament today to insist that the vetting process must not be a sheer conveyor belt. Questions like what is one's net worth? If this is someone who has been in public service, then let us know that between then and now, what exactly have you done to earn this massive increase you're talking about? Yeah. So that if there is an anomaly, if there is any areas of doubt, then that should and must be a basis upon which such a nominee is rejected. Okay. Without that, I think young people are still going to insist on active citizenry. Okay. Thank you.
Bol, I'm wondering whether this is a necessary question, because shouldn't the question have been reversed? Because we've seen what is going on even with the EACC and the ODPP. EACC says ECS nominee Oparanya has money that he acquired fraudulently. ODPP says this was money from a loan. In fact, he was unable to pay that loan. He was even sued. EACC says that this letter came late. Because wouldn't the question have been better if the MPs said, CS so and so, there's this land that we saw you acquired this way. We think it was fraudulently acquired because there's a question around it. So that you answer on that specific question. That way you're put to task to answer on a specific item that you own, rather than just the blanket question of what is your net worth.
That is one aspect of it. But before I come to your question, there's something that Abdullahi said that I'd like to touch on. And when he was talking about Penina Malonza, you see, just because what he's talking about is the thing that young people have been saying, that I'm not going to vote because at the end of the day the results are already predetermined. A lot of them have said that. But just because you have a perception of something, or you know how something will end up, doesn't mean you should not do your part. Let them, you know, cancel those nominees. Let them reject them. Let them redeem themselves, because you can't say that let me roll in the mud because at the end of the day I'm going to get dirty. No, do your part. Let Kenyans see that you are doing your part. You are actually representing them as they expect you to, and then leave the rest for the next person. Eventually, the pressure will pile on, because Kenyans will start to ask, even you, the National Assembly keeps on rejecting this person. Why do you keep on forcing them to be appointed? Why do you keep on, doing A, B, C, and D? So let the National Assembly do their bit. Let them absolve themselves, and then leave it for the next person. The citizens are ready to take that up. And if you have been watching what the citizens are saying, they're saying you do your part. Stop saying that I'm not doing this because of so and so. We will deal with that person ourselves. No. So I think that's a notion that we really need to change. The burden of proof in any job interview, because it's a job interview, is always on the interviewee. And so that is why I like the suggestion that you give, because you should be able to beyond doubt prove that you are the best person for this job. You should be able to prove why you are the best person for this job, as opposed to other possible candidates. You should be able to also prove that you've got a track record that puts you in the best place to be in that position. You should be able to defend your integrity in a way that no one else can. But what we are seeing with the vetting process is a situation whereby the interviewer has the burden of ensuring that you are comfortable in your interviewing seat. And the Kenyans are then being given the burden of trying to prove why they don't think that person is the best candidate, which is a very different approach from anything I have ever seen. And this issue of EACC versus, the DP, it's situation of the investigator versus the prosecutor, where EACC in any panel they will always say, so our work is just to investigate, our work is to do this, our work is to do this, but our weakest link is the ODPP. And if this is a statement that they have said year in, year out, we then maybe need to relook at the functions of the ODPP, the functions of the EACC, and see what are some of the gaps that we need to address. Because it cannot be that year in, year out, case in, case out, vetting in, vetting out, the problem is the same. So at what point are we actually going to address it? And finally, on what just been said, when we're talking about the pending bills, it's a very delicate situation. And why I say this is because if you look within your close circles, at whatever level, you know someone who knows someone, just like the COVID case, you know someone who knows someone who has either, gotten a loan that they are paying because of the pending bills, and they've never received that money. You know someone who has gone mad. You know someone who has gotten, lifestyle diseases. You know someone who has committed suicide because of that. And so if we are not able to address that particular ill in the society, where people are feeling, for me to go into business with government, I must know someone in power, or I must be in power myself. If we are not going to address that particular situation, and we are looking at it as Mwananchi versus prosecutor, then there is an issue. Because I believe that as a leader, the first thing you should be is selfless. And the current government has always told us that they are selfless leaders. So as a selfless leader, you are like a mother, where you say, and in my culture they say, so I'm trying to translate, the person who has given birth does not eat. So you are sacrificing to ensure that the people you are serving are first able to, receive that they are able to feel your service, because you are there to serve. And I've always said that these are employees of Kenyans. They are there to serve Kenyans, but it's not what we are seeing.
All right, Billion, finally on this, because I want us now to shift and talk about a bit of politics. Is this necessary? That question.
I think it is necessary, but it would have made more sense if there was more, more files from the EACC, more files from the KRA, more files from the ODPP, so that we get to understand, to know that, this property were legally acquired, and so that we don't have so many question marks. Because right now, what they've done to these nominees, we know they are rich. It looks like they're just trying to tell us, for you to be a CS, you have to be a rich person, because we've not seen anybody who is worth less than 100 million. If you look at most of young people, nobody feels that it's in that category. So it looks like, we have money, we are just coming to serve. Yeah. So, but what I think should have been done is, just poke more questions, poke more holes, so that we get to understand and also get to respect these people for what they have.
Okay.
Right now, they've just left them in a space where, walikuja wakaiba pesa zetu. Okay. Yeah, so that is my feeling. I think it's important, necessary, but let's handle it differently, so that we are convinced that these people made their money in a decent way. Okay,
let's talk about a bit of politics now, because we're shifting gears and talking about politics, but let's bring up some feedback on this particular topic, and then we'll talk about politics. It's been touted as a broad-based government, but do the young people feel included in that broad-based government? J. Musoma says, shockingly, in 21 months of office, Ruto's CSs have minted millions. Kindiki's net worth increased by 150 million, while Wahome 109 million and Soipan 87 million. It can't be that the only time their wealth escalates grossly is during their tenure in cabinet. Okay. Edward says, in my entire life, I have never seen the name of a cabinet nominee being rejected in parliament. Does it mean all the nominees are always clean? Okay. Let's see what else. Bob says, youth must be bold in their ambitions to win the fight against corruption and opulence, to improve moral standards in government and society, to provide a strong foundation for good governance and promote fertile ground for reforms and political behavior. Okay. Gabi says, we have a compromised National Assembly. Kenyans don't have faith in the vetting committee. The MPs are just going to rubber stamp the cabinet nominees. Okay. Ole Shonko says, I think we need to leave the work of looking into the net worth for different nominees to the Auditor General. We cannot really substantiate the truth of the figures thrown to us by the nominees. Okay. Sir Nixon says, President William Ruto directed public servants who have attained the retirement age of 60 years to proceed to retirement. Ironically, some CS's nominees are either very few years short of 60 years or above 60 years. equal problem. Okay. Okelo says, having listened to the already vetted CS nominees, one thing is becoming more evident. The next cabinet promises to be better than the previous one, both in terms of competence and sensitivity. The only factor that could prevent them from delivering could be micromanagement. Wanaina says, only through meticulous scrutiny can we unveil the authentic alignment of their wealth with declared income sources, preventing the deceitful facades of falsified, underreported, or exaggerated claims. Okay. All right. Abdullah, we'll start with you again. Now, this political arrangement that's going on right now, it's been touted as a broad-based government. Other people say coalition government. Others, it depends on what you want to call it. But as a young person, do you feel included in this political arithmetic?
No, Trevor. I don't think we feel included because, one, it has come at the aftermath of agitation for better governance, agitation for less police brutality, agitation for less corruption, which were highly advanced by young people. For the president to feel that to form this broad-based government will solve the problems those young people who feel disenfranchised, who feel not included within the political system of this country, was to include members of the opposition into his government, I think is a fallacy. I don't think, if anything, young people were out in the streets for issues. We were out in the streets because of corruption. We were out in the streets because of police brutality. We were out in the streets because people could go to TV interviews and brag about watches worth 16 million and belts worth 900,000 because of sheer opulence in the face of hard economic times. Those issues is what we want solved. We do not, however way you will solve it, whether be it through a broad-based government, whether through it, all of these things, we want those issues solved. We also want young people involved. Do young people feel involved in this new formation? I do not think. It's another handshake. It's an unfortunate situation that we found ourselves in.
Okay. Josephine, are you involved? Do you feel involved, or is this better governance system?
I concur with my colleague Abdullahi. I feel like what we mean, what essentially in theory is supposed to mean by a broad-based government is a government that supports, you know, two things, about four things, but I'll echo two. One, inclusivity, meaning including people of all social groups, ages, you know, ethnicities, religious groups. Yes, that is number one. Secondly, coalition. So the government right now has focused solely on the coalition aspect and not realized that we need to include other people of social groups and the inclusivity aspect. I'll actually echo the third one. Consensus decisions. I mean, people who have the same goal for the country, people who have their decision-making processes will align with the visions of the current regime, you know. So are these people who have the mindset of Kenya moving forward and Vision 2030 in mind? So at the moment, the government has solely focused on coalition parties and not realized that when we had broad-based government, we had so much hope of you putting in people with, you know, better degrees, you know, people with people who have the country's mindset and people at heart, the country's interest at heart, and focus only on the coalition side, which they have means that they have not learned from the protests that the Gen Zs have put out. They have not realized the cries of people in the demonstrations in the streets. They have not realized that the call is not for you to, you know, bring in Azimio Coalition or ODM or whoever. The call is to include everybody and have the same consensus in the government.
Yeah.
So we do not feel included at all in this broad-based government situation.
Okay. Patience, is this the panacea to the things that the youth were agitating for? Is this the solution? The broad-based government?
Personally, first, I'd like to say that the nominees, the CS nominees, are fairly young, and the country is for all, and we need a balance of the young and the old to blend in all positions. Are they involved? Yes, because the current happenings that we are having in the country right now is a result of the voices of the youths who, after the anti-finance protests that were happening. This is what we are having right now. And again, the president is coming to a realization that there is need for changes to happen, not only in the cabinet, in the ministries, but also perhaps in principal secretaries. And I believe the young people will be able to get involved, and we have a more inclusive government that is a combination or a blend of the young people and the older people to make sure that the country moves ahead.
The average age in Kenya is 19. You think the cabinet is fairly young?
Yes, I say it's fairly young because we have cabinet secretary nominees who are below 40. Below 40. The cabinet secretary nominee for health,
the one for
health and for water, also for health, is 38 years old. She's 38 years old.
So that works in the
It's
cabinet
fairly
of
young.
more than
Remember, use the word fairly young.
So out of 22, 2 of them are...
But there's still many other positions that are yet to come, and I believe if the president is to consider the young people, because he's a listening president, because the current happenings are as a result of the voices of the young people from the protest. And I believe if there's a way that they're going to look into the principal secretaries that are there, I believe the young people will be more involved. Look at the parastatals that we have. I believe that the young people will be involved more.
So you think this broad-based government is the solution going forward?
Yes, it is a solution because it is not excluding any Kenyans. We are bringing together all the regions because as a result of the protest, we have seen the young people agitated and saying, Kenya is not for a few people. Okay. We need a Kenya that is inclusive, and that is why we have gone for these broad-based governments, to include everyone and ensure that we meet the needs of every Kenyan.
Okay. Abdi, I know you want to jump in, but just write it down. I'll come to see what the kid has to say about this first, then I'll give you a chance to respond. Is this the solution, the broad-based government for the young people?
The broad-based government is a solution to a very small extent. It is only to the extent that it brings ethnopolitical stability, that our political mobilization, the usual mobilization criterion, it helps the government of the day to kind of enjoy a bit of stability. But this is a far cry from what the young people of this country were asking for. The young people of this country were not saying that you go to the opposition benches and identify potential ethnic kingpins who could help you win re-election in 2027. The young people of this country went to the streets and said that, number one, the cabinet that was in office was largely incompetent. It was unable to help the president deliver to the people of Kenya. That if you look at what you call it as the key ministries and key priority areas that a common sense government should focus on, we were scoring very poorly on them. Start with security. Remember that an elected leader was killed in the bandit-prone area of North Rift. Remember that around that time, common Kenyans were being picked from the streets. Remember around that time, we lost 75 young Kenyans who were protesting for their rights. Come to agriculture. Look at the mess that the last cabinet presided over. Come to education. Term 1 alone, the school capitation was not being delivered on time. So these are the people that, so when Kenyans went to the streets, they were saying that they need a government that is efficient, that is able to deliver to them. What did the president do? What the president first, his number one consideration was ethnic balance. Well, ethnic balance has got a place. For us, some of us who read constitutional law, like Abdi will tell you, that there is what is called constitutionalism. But we cannot achieve constitutionalism at the expense of everything else. So that the president is only concerned on having the faces of different ethnicities, while he does not go to the heart of merit. For instance, if the president wanted someone from the coast, it can't be that in the entire coastal area, the nominee we have from that area is someone who in 2017, we had an affidavit saying that he did not go to Serani Primary School. And then For some reason, even if he went to Serani Primary School, Serani Secondary School, and then his score, then for some strange reason he has a degree. So this degree, are we able to then verify that he actually went to class and earned his degree? So those are questions that even as the vetting, I know we have moved away from the vetting, but even as the vetting is going on, those are questions that Kenyans must address themselves to and get satisfactory answers to. And failure to get satisfactory answers, let them reject the nominees. And of course, if they don't, remember that the sovereign power still belongs to the people.
Yeah.
And permit, as I conclude, I have always believed in the words of Thomas Jefferson, that governments are put in place through the consent of the governed to achieve just three things: preserve right to life, right to liberty, and right to own property. And when government become destructive to these ends, it is always the right of the people to alter such a government or abolish it altogether.
Okay, Bolo.
I feel like the president is moving on. You know, when you are going through a tough issue and you don't want to address it, you easily, and allow me to use a relationship for lack of a better example. When you're going through, if Kidi and I are dating, for example, and he breaks my heart, I will easily move to a rebound. You see, I have moved on, but I have not addressed that issue. So it will catch up with me soon. And that is what I feel the president is doing. We've not seen him, you know, address, and this is why I earlier said that we need to see the humane face of these leaders.
Yes.
We've not seen him, you know, be at the forefront of ensuring that the victims who lost their lives in this protest have been, you know, their families have been catered for. We've not seen justice for those families. We've not seen him, you know, sit down. Just, I mean, the young people said, call us to Nyayo Stadium, the way you would call us for a rally. Let's pass the mic around so that then if I hear my neighbor who does not know anyone in the political space being given the opportunity to speak, then I know it's authentic. Even if you do not, you know, sometimes as a leader, you have to seem to be transparent, even if you do not want to. At least try and pretend that you're being transparent. We've not even seen that goodwill. And secondly, we've seen what journalists have gone through. Media is, it's a bedrock of democracy.
Yes.
So if we have a situation where media personalities are complaining about getting threats, we are seeing them, you know, being attacked as they're covering the protest. What does that tell you? You're moving, and you know, they're moving on without addressing those particular issues. It means that if they know they can get away with it once, they will definitely do it again because they know they can get away with it. So for me, the first thing is I would have wanted to see him deal with some of the aftermaths of the protests and put a humane face to it. Let's see him say, I have heard you. Because what he has done, number one, is now to try and, you know, weaken the opposition. But what he is forgetting is that this particular protest, some may say it was funded or whatnot, but I know a large number of young people who just said, look, I am also feeling it. We know a large number of Kenyans who said, I am going to the streets because this is where I am feeling there's an issue. We had them speak in terms that, you know, through their lived experiences, it was very simple to understand, no jargon because of their lived experiences. So he needs to come back, and I would have wanted to see the president actually show that he is listening. And for, you know, the opposition or former opposition, because we don't know where they stand now or if they're in both, for them to ride on the blood, sweat and tears of young people to give themselves positions that they have coveted. And I say coveted because some of those positions they have been given are positions that they were promised towards the 2022 elections. So these are positions they have coveted. It to disrespect the fact that there are young people whose blood touched the soil of this nation and decide you are moving on and using it as an opportunity to get yourself in government. I'm simply hoping that young people will this time round wait for them at the ballot in 2027, because some of those you know, people who are now being told that they're now joining the broad-based government because the president have had, they've been legislators for some time. If you look at the number of bills they have sponsored, if you look at the state of their constituencies, if you look at how they lobbied for their constituencies, really, are those the best people that we are saying have the track record? Because we have you know, members of parliament, we have who Kenyans were saying, we feel that this person is listening to us. Yeah. We feel that this person is representing us. We had members of, you know, we had legislators who were using their bodies as shields when people wanted to be beaten up. We had legislators who were saying, as their bodyguards were whisking them away, no, go and save that child. That young person has fallen down there. Yeah. So we have legislators who Kenyans are feeling have listened to them, and we are not seeing them running towards that direction.
Billion, you've been in this political scene routine for quite some time. Does the broad-based government address your concerns?
First of all, thank you for mentioning that. As a young person who vied on a UDA ticket, hoping to represent the people of Mathare constituency in Parliament, I think because I know I have interacted with President a couple of times at a personal level, and I've seen, you know, I bought, you know, his ideas around what he wanted to do for the young people. But for this, I am a bit disappointed because it looks like a regrouping of the political class, and that's what young people have been against. This is an urgent, that voice was an urgent voice from young people. And when you get that urgent voice and you don't listen to that urgent voice, then they get to a point where, you know, they have nothing to lose. These people, most of the young people can't even pay their rent, can't even fend for themselves, can't do nothing. And when you see the political class coming together and saying, you know, we have the interest of this country, we know what you're talking about, and we're not seeing, you know, proper plans of how you're going to achieve this. I was hoping that, you know, as a matter of urgency, to see these are the plans, because we need to have 2 million jobs for young people for the next 10 years. Every year, 2 million jobs. We needed to see not roadside declaration that, oh, mtajenga, mtafanya nini, tutafanya, tutawaweka, proper plan. And that can even be through a sit down. He doesn't need to have all of us to sit together with him to come up with a plan. We need to see a political goodwill from him, constituting a small youth advisory board that he can remind him, you know, boss, will you promise he, this is what young people are talking about. But what we are seeing right now is the political class regrouping for survival. All of them, that voice was clear to them. All of them are doing this for survival. And you can only survive for some time. It will get to a point when young people are tired. You saw when they were celebrating when the military were on the street. We keep saying that, you know, we don't know how it feels to be in a military state. But where we are right now, most of young people are tired. They are ready for anything that looks like change. Okay. So people are tired. They are just pushing the wall. When the wall falls down, they will not care who is on the other side. Okay. So for me, I would tell the president, you know, we understand you need to survive. There needs to be a political survival, but please, as a matter of urgency, please listen to the voices of young people. Okay. They are the majority, and when they get to a point when they can't handle it anymore, you will see they'll be okay with anything. Okay,
Abdullah, you wanted to add something, but what Billion is also saying, the president said that he did listen to the young people. They came out, said they wanted the finance bill rejected, he rejected it. They wanted the cabinet dissolved, he dissolved it. So what kind of listening do you want?
We want more. But I'll tell you, they are fair asks.
Yeah.
They are fair asks. We're not demanding anything out of the ordinary. We're demanding everything that a citizen should demand from the government of the day. Yes. We're demanding an end to corruption. We're demanding an end to police brutality. We do not want to be killed in the streets. Gunshots on Parliament Road, Trevor. We do not want. We want an economy that works for the Kenyan people. We do not want to be overtaxed to death. We do not want our airport sold without us knowing. We want all of those things working for people. We want civil service to work for people. We want vaccinations for our children. We want hospitals that are functioning. We want classrooms built. We want a curriculum that the Kenyan people and the Kenyan students and the Kenyan teachers can understand. We want classrooms. We want everything that citizenry should demand from their government. My sister is happy about the fairly young age of some of the cabinet nominees. I do not think that is really what we're demanding. We're demanding competence. He stood and told the Kenyan public that some of my cabinet secretaries, I know more about their particular ministries and their particular domains. So what advice would they be giving me? So we want competent people, regardless of their age. We want competent people. We want people who are in office courtesy of merit. We do not want political appointments and people who do not work for the Kenyan people. So really, those are our demands. I think they're very fair and realistic demands. They're nothing out of the ordinary. If the president had any intention of making those things work, that is what he promised the Kenyan people in 2022. He promised that there will be no handshake. He's given us one. He promised that there will be no police brutality on his watch. He's given us 50 deaths within the span of 2 months, 2.5 months. He's given us exactly everything that he promised he will not give us.
Okay, so for you, the issue of age is not even of concern. But before you mention that, let me just mention that this county hall right now, there's activity happening. The vetting is about to kick off. I believe the Speaker of the National Assembly is already there. That is Moses Wetangula. And there's a list of cabinet secretary nominees who are going to be vetted now. This Dr. Andrew Mwihia Karanja, Agriculture and Livestock, is the first one who should go there on the hot seat. That will be followed by Honorable Aidan Bare Duale, Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Mr. Eric Muride Muga, Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, Mr. Davis Chirchir, Roads and Transport, and finally Dr. Margaret Nyambura Ndungu for Information Communication and the Digital Economy. As soon as the vetting kicks off, we'll cross over there straight up. But Abdullah, you're mentioning something. So for you, the age is not of concern as long as it's competence?
It is of importance, representation, for us to feel represented, that we are a part of an administration. It is important for us to see people who are like us and of our age. But I do not think, in my opinion, that it comes over competence. I'm okay with a 60-year-old who is competent. I'm okay with a 60-year-old who works for the people. I'm okay with a 60-year-old who does not kill people. I'm okay with a 60-year-old who is not corrupt.
Okay. Josephine, do you agree?
I think the message is very loud and clear, and has been loud and clear for a long time. I do believe that the president is a listening president, but I also believe that he's not listening properly, or rather he should listen, as Abdullah said, more. The message is loud and clear. If I know the president probably is not on Twitter, probably doesn't view Twitter, but he probably watches Daybreak. And if I were to tell him something, I would tell him 4 things: transparency, accountability, meritocracy, and goodwill. Okay. That's all we want from a broad-based government. Right. I know a broad-based government can be formed post-conflict, a post-conflict era, and this is the post-conflict. But what does the conflict, what is the effect of the conflict that we just had? It's not a broad-based government inclusive of another coalition. It's one that requires people of those 4 things. I know Abdullah said a 60-year-old who's competent, and I think Kidi said we cannot have constitutionalism over something that is of merit. And I agree, absolutely. As long as your government works, that is what the young people are saying. We want something that works, a health sector that works, yes, a CBC that is working. We want water everywhere and electricity. We want urbanization. We do not want to be kicked out of lands that we have title deeds for. That is what we want, working.
All right. I have to take a quick break. When we come back, I know the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, is currently just giving preliminaries and housekeeping rules at 8 a.m. They're supposed to start. They've actually started bang on time. When you come back, I'll try and get closing remarks from my panelists really fast and then cross over to the vetting as soon as they start. All right? See you in a bit.